So we have today's Torah portion moving along is Parshas Vayislach. So if you recall, Yaakov is living in Haran, which is part of Turkey. There's still actually a place called Haran. And now 20 years later, he is the proud father of the 12 tribes, of the 11 tribes, and a daughter Dinah. He has, Baruch Hashem, 4 wives, Leah, Rachel, Zilpah, Bilhah, and it is time for him to return back to Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land. And we'll sum up the Torah portion, and then we're going to go into the details. So he travels with all of his wealth, his sheep, his family and extended family, and he sends a message to his brother Esau, from whom he's estranged. Remember, Esau wanted to kill him. And he says, let's meet up, let's reunite, let's reconcile. And he hears that Esau is coming to meet up with him with 400 men. So what is he thinking? What would you be thinking? As Diane just pointed out, that Esau's not coming to reconcile, Esau's coming to wage war. He's going to get him. So how does Yaakov prepare? 3 ways. He gets ready to fight back. He has prayer, they pray, and he also prepares gifts. So he's going to start off with trying to give gifts. He's going to also pray, and he's also going to prepare in the eventuality that there has to be a war. As he's right before he's about to meet Esau, he remembers that he has left some of his possessions on the other side of the Yabok River. So he goes back by himself, unescorted, to retrieve those jugs, those jars. And the famous story of how he struggles and wages battle with this unknown man, who we find out later is the host angel of Esau. He prevails, and he goes back. He meets up with Esau. There's a reconciliation. They each go part their ways to the different parts of the land of Israel. And then there's a terrible tragedy. His daughter Dinah, daughter of Leah, goes into the city of Shechem, and the prince of Shechem, the son of Haran, the king, abducts her, violates her, rapes her, and her 2 brothers go in, Levi and Shimon. They wipe out, they kill out all the men, and they rescue their daughter Dinah. And the Torah portion ends how Jacob journeys on, and his wife Rachel dies in childbirth, giving birth to the youngest tribe, youngest son Binyamin. She's buried in the cave of Rachel in Bethlehem. Remember, she's not buried in the cave of Machpelah with the other matriarchs and patriarchs. And this is how the Torah portion ends, with the death of Rachel, the passing of Rachel. So there's a lot happening in this Torah portion. And I want to try to address 2 of the very most powerful insights and stories in this Torah portion. Let's start with Yaakov and Esau. So Yaakov is estranged from Esau for 20 years. And he sends a message, I want to reconcile with you. And Esau and him are coming together. We start off with the vision of Yaakov meeting up with Esau. Now you have to understand that when you read the stories, it's not such a simple story like when we were little kids and they told us the story. Yaakov, let's go back a little bit in time, because it's very important to understand the psychological, emotional impact that Yaakov has been going through. Remember, he was born as a twin, and when he comes out of his mother's womb, he's holding on literally to his brother's ankle. The commentaries and the Medrash say he was trying to get out first, so to speak. He's holding on to his brother's ankle. He wants to be the firstborn, but Esau is born as the oldest. And he's called Yaakov, which means heel. Interesting. and also means cunning. Then we fast forward. He's known as a man who's a scholar, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather, the future man of study, a man of scholar. And Esau is the hunter, the killer, and worshiping idolatry. His mother Rivka says to him, your brother cannot get the birthright blessings. So he puts on his brother's clothes and he deceives his father, so to speak, and he gets the blessings of his brother. Because now he has to assume, remember the leadership, as we discussed last week, of the Jewish nation. The future is now Jacob. So first Esau sells him the birthright, and then he takes the blessings. And then he has to run away. Now, we look at Esau as the victim, right? When you look at the story, Esau lost his birthright. But Yaakov, in a sense, is also going through a tremendous stress and psychological turmoil. Against his very nature, he dresses up as his brother and he takes the birthright blessings. Even though God wanted him to and it was meant to happen, it does impact a person to now go away from their very nature and do something they weren't really meant to do or wouldn't think of doing. And right before he leaves, his mother says the very powerful words that people don't realize. She says to him, run away to my brother in Haran, go to love on my brother, until your brother Esau's anger assuages, till he calms down. And then the end of the same pasuk, the same passage, she says, and until the anger subsides. And the commentaries say, why did she repeat herself? You just said, run away till your brother's anger assuages or subsides, and the anger subsides. The second part, she's telling him, till your anger subsides, till you come to terms with what happened. It's not only Esau was traumatized, Yaakov was also traumatized. Yaakov also must probably felt anger. Why did I have to do this? Why did I have to come away in such a cunning way that now I have to leave my warm bed, my loving parents, and my place of birth, the land of Israel, and go to Haran, a place of idolatry? He was also upset. It's very important to understand this now. Why? Because now, 20 years later, he wants to make peace with his brother. And we have to ask ourselves, did he come to terms with what happened? Because you cannot face your enemy. You cannot face those you are estranged from. You cannot make peace with other people if you are not at peace with yourself. It doesn't work. If you're still struggling with the turmoil and the pain of something that happened in your youth or in your life, with your family or anything else, you cannot come face to face with your brother until you come face to face with yourself. And this is what happens now, because suddenly he goes back for a bunch of jars and it says Levadai, he's by himself. But is he really by himself? Because he's attacked by a man. He's not by himself. Why does the Torah say, and he is Levadai, he's by himself? He's not by himself. But remember the story. Go ahead, Margaret. What do you want to say? Unmute.
Maybe he couldn't see it, the angel, or it felt like he was by himself.
Okay, he could maybe think he felt that he was by himself, but really he wasn't by himself. Okay. Anybody else have an insight they want to share? It says he went back over to the river. Levadai, he was alone. So remember that every story in the Torah is both the story, the way it happened, the actual story in actuality, but because it's the Torah, it's also a metaphysical. It is the story of our lives. It is a story that has much greater depth and a universal message for us. So he was levadai, he was alone. He was alone, which means that he was struggling with himself. It's representative of us struggling internally with ourselves. So the story is he wasn't really alone. He was really fighting with the host angel of Esau, with a man who was really an angel. But on the other hand, it's also talking about an internal struggle, and an internal struggle that's you, yourself, and you, me, myself, and I. So Levadai is the Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, Hasidus teaching us there's an internal struggle that you have with yourself. There's nothing to do with, you might be punching someone out, but you also have an internal struggle. It's a different type of struggle. So let's see what happens. Very cryptic story here. So he meets up with this guy who attacks him, and they're struggling and they're fighting the entire night. And it's coming almost to the end of the night. The sun is about to rise, and the angel, the host angel of Esau, dislocates Esau's, Yaakov's hip, his sciatica. He's wounded, and says, okay, now let me go. I have to return, because the angel cannot stay once the sun rises. It has to go back to bless. There's a protocol for angels. Roll call up in heaven. So there's a very crazy conversation. Listen to this conversation. The angel says to Yaakov, okay, let me go now. I have to go. Obviously, Yaakov wins over him. He dislocates his sciatica, but Yaakov is holding on to him. He's not letting him go. He says, I have to leave. I have to go back to roll call up in the heavens. And Yaakov says to him, before you leave, before I let you go, you have to bless me. Really? Someone's trying to kill you, you're asking them for a blessing? Who says they'll bless you? He wants to shoot you in the head. So he says, so the angel responds, okay, what's your name? What's your name? My name is Yaakov. Well, your name can't be Yaakov anymore. I am now officially changing your name to Yisrael, which means one who has prevailed over the divine and man, one who has conquered and prevailed over the divine and man. Yaakov says, and what's your name? And he doesn't respond. And he blesses him, and the angel leaves, and Yaakov is wounded, he's limping, and now his name is Yisrael. This is the story. So what happened over here? Anybody want to analyze the story? Let's analyze the story now on the regular level, then we'll analyze it on the metaphysical level. You can't be wrong. Whatever you say is good. Anybody want to say? Don't be shy. Okay, should I say? Should I? So basically, Yaakov is fighting with Esau's host angel, who's out to get him, right? No one really is the victor, but Yaakov seems to be the victor. He dislocates his sciatica. That's why Jews, when you buy kosher meat, you can never buy the part of the sciatica, because of this story. From then on, we were banned from eating any part of that sciatica area of the meat. So Yaakov is wounded, but he wins over the angel. Remember, he's holding on. He's not letting go. The angel says, let me go. I'll bless you. So firstly, the reason Yaakov tells the angel to bless him is a very interesting insight. From every struggle, from every battle, from every trial and tribulation, we have to draw out a blessing. That is our approach to life. You struggle, you're waging war, you're fighting, there's a battle, whether it's an internal battle, an external battle, an emotional battle, a psychological battle, a physical battle. We always have to see what is the blessing in this battle and how can I grow from this experience? Because no battle is naught. God doesn't give a battle. Oh yeah, we have nothing else to give them. Every struggle we encounter is that we could draw out some blessing from it. That's why we say it's a blessing in disguise. And I always now started to bless my children. It should be revealed blessing. I don't want a blessing in disguise. No, thank you. So that's one thing. And then the angel says, you're no longer Yaakov now. You're Israel, which means one who is the Prince of God, one who has conquered the divine and man. Yaakov was the guy who was holding on to Esau's heel. Yaakov was the fellow who left Israel in pain about having to take the birthright and assuming the leadership that his brother Esau was meant to have. But now Yaakov is a different person. Yaakov emotionally and psychologically struggled with his identity. Who am I? Am I the same guy that left 20 years ago? Or am I now a different person? Now I'm a different person. I'm a person who has made peace with who I am. Who I am, my identity. That doesn't mean I will never struggle again or there'll be no struggles, but I have made peace with my identity of who I am. And that's why now I can be called Yisrael, not Yaakov anymore. I'm no longer the little boy who held on to the heel of my brother and wanted to be my brother because he was the firstborn. I now made peace with I am. And that's why he says, I came face to face with God, and I'm going to call this place Peniel because I came face to face with God. When a person struggles internally with your conscience, with what you should do or shouldn't do, or how to approach things, you're really struggling with God, your neshama, your godly self. So when he struggled, he says, I came face to face with God. Exactly. Every one of us, when we struggle, we are really struggling with our godly soul, our neshama. And we come every time face to face with who I am, my godly soul, my identity. And the struggle is forever. It's not a struggle that you finish and that's it. That's why now he comes back over the river, and the Zohar, book of Kabbalah, describes how he keeps bowing and bowing and bowing as he gets closer and closer to his brother. And then his brother kisses him. Very uncanny. You would think his brother was going to kill him, but no, his brother embraces, they cry, they hug, they kiss, and they reconcile at that moment. So why does he bow? The Torah says he's bowing and bowing as he gets closer. It's almost like a dance, because he's constantly coming closer to reconciling with his brother, but also reconciling again with his internal struggle, like we said before. You cannot face your adversary if you cannot face yourself, internally and also externally. You have to always come from a position of strength, they say. If you feel strong with who you are, what you are, your emotional state, you could deal with all the baloney that's going on. But if you yourself are struggling, it's very hard to communicate with those who are adversary, confrontational, or downright mean people, or any struggles that come in our lives. Children, spouses, friends, employees, relatives, friends, businesses, anybody. So the first step is always making peace within yourself, and then you can make peace with others or face others. And that's why in this whole section must say panim, panim, panim like 10 times. Face, face, face. But the Torah doesn't translate it at face because it would sound ridiculous. And he faced him, and he will face him, and when he faces him, he will faces him. So what does the Torah say? And when he encountered Esau, and it uses reference to face, but if you keep translating in, and he faced him, will face him, faces him, and faces him, you're like, what? So when they translate the passages, they make it more grammatically readable to us. But if you look at the Torah portion, it's like, I have to tell you how many faces is here. He Amar Panav, Panav, Ili Yisel Panai, Kaitavar Minchal Panav. Yaakov is ascribing, and when I'll come face to face to him, and when I'll get closer to his face, and when I'll bring him the gift to his face. So the Torah uses more grammatically correct words so that the passage reads more smoothly. But if you go to the actual wording, it keeps saying face, 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 and that's how the Zohar and the Kabbalah analyzes the fact that it's about coming to terms with your own face, facing yourself before you could face others. That's how we derive this whole insight about confronting our inner struggles and inner challenges. So you see now, very interestingly enough, that it's a story of reconciliation, but it's also the story of inner reconciliation. So does anybody want to add anything before we go on to the next conversation? So before we go on, which is going to be the sad story about Dinah, I want to just share one more interesting thing. That remember, Jacob prepared three things: gifts, prayer, and war. And again, on a spiritual level, in life, when we wage battle with our negative inclination, the first thing, we are bodies, souls in a physical body. So first thing, we need to gift ourselves: food, sleep, exercise. If you want to have a cohesive relationship with your soul, you have to also appease the body. You can't say to the body, we're going to fast all day and all night because we are so spiritual. You have to feed your body. You have to dress your body. You have to put on makeup. You have to look beautiful and feel beautiful. Then you can move on with prayer. Do spiritual things. Pray to God, study Torah, and have spiritual pursuits. And lastly, at times, we do have to wage war with the negative inclination. You know, we have the Yetzer Tov, the positive inclination, and the negative inclination that says, what do you need to do that for? This is a much better route for us. What do you need to be so holy? Now it's time to relax, not to go, not to go to shul, not to daven, not to give tzedakah, not to eat kosher. Now it's a time for recreation. So in life, we have these three ways. We have to appease our bodies. We have to then make time for spiritual pursuits. And at times we even have to say to the negative inclination, cut it out. That's not the approach I want to take to my life. So the three levels of Yaakov approaching Esau is really three levels of how we approach ourselves, our essence, the Esau within us, so to speak. It's another very, very cute little insight that I read that I could relate to. You know, you need different things at different times in your life. So now we come to the very controversial story of Dinah. It's not controversial, more like sad, tragic. And what happened here? Terrible story to Dinah, right? Everybody knows about the story before. Everybody remembers what happened. Everybody knows the story. And what really got me very upset as I read this book, The Red Tent, where they say it was a love story. It was a love story, which is so the antithesis of what actually happened. It's a horrible story.
Interesting.
So listen what happens. So now he's reconciled. Esau goes his way. Yaakov goes his way. They now come to the land of Israel, a portion called Shechem. King of Shechem is Charon, and he has a son who's a prince. And Dinah was gorgeous. Not only she was beautiful and gorgeous, the daughter of Leah, she was also internally gorgeous. She was the Torah describes her as a very beautiful person inside and out. Okay? So now let's see what happens. Dinah bas Leah. I'm reading it because the wording is very important. And there went Dinah, the daughter of Leah, Asher Yelda Yaakov, Yaakov was the father, Lir Ois, to look, Bib Benois Haaretz, upon, listen to the language, upon the daughters of the land. And there saw her Shechem, the son of Hamor, sorry, his name was Hamor, what did I call him? The Hivite, and he took her, he abducted her, and he violated her. And then he tells his father, I want to marry her. I'm enthralled. I'm infatuated. I'm in love. He used like 6 adjectives to describe his infatuation with Dinah. So his father goes to Yaakov and says, my son is in love with your beautiful daughter. And remember, he doesn't release her. He has her captive. and I want you to marry. I want to set up a shidduch here. So Yaakov says, absolutely not. This cannot happen. And Shimon and Levi say to the people of Shechem, if you want your son to marry our sister, it can happen. You know why? You're idolaters. You're uncircumcised. How could you marry our sister? You're not from our people.
Yeah.
So they said, we'll circumcise ourselves. So they all circumcise. And the third day, when they're all in bed, Levi and Shimon go in and they kill out every male in
Good.
Shechem. Only the women remain.
Good.
And they take Dinah back to their home. They free her. They release her. Terrible tragedy from every way you look at it.
Yeah.
Right? So the question is, Rashi says, first of all, Rashi, the classic commentary, asks, why does it say the daughter of Leah? Isn't she also the daughter of Yaakov? Even though later it says Yaakov was the father, but why doesn't it say the daughter of Leah and Yaakov, or Yaakov and Leah? The daughter of Leah. So Rashi answers with the following, and this becomes very controversial. Listen to this. The daughter of Leah, was she not the daughter of Jacob? However, says Rashi, she is called the daughter of Leah is because the Torah says she went out to the city of Shechem. She went out. And her mother also went out. So, regarding this, we have to say, like mother, like daughter. This is where the saying comes from, like mother, like daughter, like father, like son, from Rashi.
Wow.
Now, let me ask you a question. I'm reading to you this Rashi. Does it sound to you like Rashi is being complimentary to Dinah and Leah, or he's being saying, oh, go ahead, Diane. What is he saying in your opinion? It's very important.
Yeah, I feel like it's a put down.
Very good.
Excuse me.
I don't know what happened. Oh, sorry, I don't know. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Excuse me.
Rashi is saying, well, she should have stayed home. She went out. Look what happens when you go out, like mother, like daughter. Her mother was an outgoing lady. She's outgoing like her mother. And look what happened. This is what got her into trouble. This is what it seems like Rashi is saying, right?
It's so unfair. Seems so unfair.
It seems condemning of Dinah's behavior. She should have stayed home with mommy and tati, daddy and mommy, and her brothers, safe and sound in the campsite, that no one would abduct you. This is what seems like Rashi says, but no. Rashi's not saying this. Rashi's saying something so powerful. How do we know? Let's build the case. Rashi says she's just like her mother, because it says that Leah went out, and it uses the same terminology. So here, when it says Dinah went out, we assume she's like Leah. Leah went out in the previous Torah portion, which I'm going to share, and Dinah went out. The Torah uses the same word, the same verb. So we know it's related, like mother, like daughter. So when does Leah go out? When does it discuss Leah going out? It seems like Leah was the shy one, doesn't it? So let's go back to the Torah portion where, let me just find it. No, it's not here. Let's go find it. Hold on. I folded the page, hopefully. Okay, hold on 1 second. It's important for me to show this to you because it's very, very pivotal. Hold on. Oh, here. Okay, found it. Ready? Sorry. This is the story where Rachel is infertile. Reuven, the son of Leah, brings his mother this plant called jasmine, which is like what we said last week, an aphrodisiac. It helps fertility. And Rachel meets Leah, sees her holding this jasmine, this mandrake plant, and says to Leah, can I have this plant? She says, I'll give you the plant if you trade me tonight to be with Yaakov. Tonight is your assigned night to be intimate with Yaakov. I'll give you the plant if you let me take tonight. And Rachel says, yes. So Leah now listen what happened. So Leah now, it's her night to be with Yaakov. So, and Jacob came from the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him. This is the going out. And she said, thou must come unto me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrake. And he lay with her that night, and God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bore to Jacob a fifth son. So what does Rashi say? Hold on. God hearkened unto Leah. Why did God make sure she got pregnant? Because he saw how much she desired to increase the tribes. So here, it's very complimentary to Leah, right? Does this story seem uncomplimentary? Does anybody read the story and say, oh, look at Leah. She went out to her husband and she told him to come to her tent. Oy vey, horrible. You read the story, you go, wow, this is so romantic, right? She goes out. She says, Jacob, it's your turn to be with me. And because of her dedication to bringing the tribes, God allows her to get pregnant that night. So does this sound to you, this story of her going out to meet Jacob, negative? What do you think, Denise? Sounds nice, right?
Yeah, it doesn't sound negative at all. Sounds nice.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you may not be so happy with the switch, but that's a different discussion.
Right.
Okay, so because Rashi there is very complimentary of the going out of Leah to meet Jacob, we now realize that Rashi is not being uncomplimentary to Dinah, but Rashi is pointing out something very, very powerful. That Dinah was her mother's daughter and inherited her mother's trait of an outgoing personality, and not only an outgoing personality, Chassidus describes, Kabbalah, a transformative personality. There's certain people born into this world with certain qualities. Everybody has qualities, but we're talking about this quality, that they have the power, and this is all positive, to transform and impact people in a very positive way, like Sarah. Dinah and Leah, Dinah inheriting from mother, was given this special quality that whoever she met, she had a very positive impact and a transformative impact on people. This was Dinah, and this was she got from her mother Leah. So this is what the Torah is pointing out here. Rashi is picking up on this, that Dinah had an outgoing personality. That's why it says, Vayislach bibenois. How it says, she went out to meet the girls of Shechem. Why does it say bibenois, in the girls of Shechem? Because the Torah said, why did she decide to take a stroll into Shechem? She knew that she goes into the city, she'll meet up with the girls and the women, and she'll talk to them about monotheism. She'll impact them. She'll do outreach. Her intention was not to go and be abducted by some scoundrel. Her intention was, I'm going to go meet the girls, sit down with them, have a little farbrengen, have a little class, have a little tea, and say, let's talk, and over the weeks get to know them and influence them into monotheism and away from idolatry. That was her intention. She had that quality to be able to do that. But there was an unfortunate incident here where she is abducted by, again, a scoundrel, a prince nonetheless, as we know in our past history with our Prince Andrew and others, what they've done, what they do in the name of their royal blood. And he violates her and abducts her and then has the chutzpah to say, I want to marry her. Maybe you should have asked before you kidnapped her if you want to marry her. Before you go out, before you violate her, you're going to ask to marry her. So Dinah was going out. The Rashi's not saying she went out because, oh yeah, she's a loose girl. She went to attract attention. She was going out for a mission because that's who Dinah was, like her mother. Her mother also took initiative. We need to have 12 tribes. I'm going to make sure that I conceive with my husband Yaakov. Taking initiative and going with direction. But the plot thickens. I want to share one more amazing insight. When Jacob prepares for war with Esau, something very strange in the passage. I want to read it to you. Bear with me, sorry about that. I bent the pages and then you know what happens. You bend the pages. Okay, hold on. Let me look. Hold on, give me 1 second. Oh, okay, no wonder here. Here. Vayikach Estein, okay, Vayakam by Layla, he gets up in the night, and he took his 2 wives, and also Zilpah and Bilhah, and his 11 children, and passed over the ford of Yabok. Rashi says, what do you mean? He took his 11 children. He had 12 children, Dinah. Remember, Benjamin wasn't born yet. He's born later in childbirth. Remember, Rachel dies. So he has 12 children, 11 sons and 1 daughter. Why does he say he took his 11 children? And Rashi says, why? Where was Dinah? He placed her in a chest and locked her in, lest Esau cast his eyes upon her. And for that, Jacob was punished for what he withheld her from his brother. For perhaps she would have led him back to the right way, and she fell into the hands of Shechem. Rashi says something very, very mind-boggling. That when Jacob was preparing to fight Esau, he was protecting his family, but he took Dinah and he locked her up in a box so that Esau shouldn't see her and say, oh, I was supposed to marry Leah, but she didn't want to marry me because I was an idolater, right? She had to marry Yaakov because Yaakov assumed my identity and his identity, as we discussed last week based on Kabbalah. So now I should be entitled to her daughter, Dinah. But Yaakov didn't want that. Yaakov doesn't want his brother Esau, the idolater, the hunter, the killer, to marry his daughter. So he hides her away. But he can't hide her because Shechem then later abducts her. So now we need for this the beauty and the insight from Chassidus to understand what happened over here. What happens over here is like this. We don't only inherit from our parents their physical DNA. My mother has blue eyes, I have blue eyes. My father's 6 foot, I'm 6 foot. We also inherit their spiritual DNA. Dinah inherited the transformative powers from her mother Leah. Now when Leah does not marry Esau, remember she was supposed to marry Esau? The older daughter was supposed to marry the older son, the younger daughter Rachel to marry Yaakov. When she doesn't marry Esau, because now she says to Yaakov, you assumed Esau's spiritual identity, so now my spiritual soulmate is you, Dinah inherits her spiritual DNA and mission to have to marry Esau. The unfulfilled missions of our life are inherited by our children. So if you had something you had to accomplish in your life and you didn't spiritually, it passes on to the next generation. It's not lost. Many times our children fulfill our destinies. Would you believe it? In a good way. What the father couldn't accomplish, the son did. What the father couldn't accomplish, the daughter did, or with the mother. What my mother couldn't accomplish, I accomplished in my life. So Dinah now inherits her mother's spiritual DNA, but Yaakov refuses to let that happen. He doesn't understand who his daughter is. Because as Rashi says, had she married Esau, she would have transformed him into the leader and the prophet and the patriarch he could have been. That was Dinah's strength. And even after Shechem, all the men are wiped out, the Torah notes that what happened to the women of Shechem? The men were all wiped out. What was left is the little children and the women. What happened to the women? The Torah says they became followers of Jacob, monotheism. They all chose a different path in life. They weren't vindictive. You killed our husbands. You killed our fathers. We're going to wage war against the Jacobites, the Jews. They weren't officially Jews yet, but the tribes of Jacob. No. They said, we want to accept belief in one God. And they became a society of belief in one God. So we see that indirectly Dinah did transform them as she was meant to. So now you're going to say it's a very disturbing story. Yeah, if we're not disturbed by this story, there's something wrong with us emotionally. But look at the consequences of our spiritual destiny. Look what happens. And the Torah could have hid this whole story and made it sound and skipped it over. And not told us what happened. But because the power of the lesson and the power of understanding what happened is so important to our present lives, we need to know what happened here. And there's one more very beautiful insight that I want to share that I mentioned a few times. When Leah got pregnant with her, Leah had, Leah, one second. Zilpah, Bilhah each had 2 tribes, right? Let's look. Leah had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Leah had 7 sons. 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Leah had 6 sons. Bilhah, the second wife, had 2 sons, and Zilpah, the next wife, had another 2 sons. Now Leah got pregnant with her 7th son. And she prayed to God, the Torah tells us. The commentaries tell us. She prayed to God. She said, Almighty God, change this fetus into a girl. Because if I give birth to the 7th son, then Rachel will only be able to give birth to 1 son who will be one of the 12 tribes. And she will be lesser than Zilpah and Bilhah, the 2 secondary wives. So not to embarrass her sister, she prays to God that her fetus changes into a girl. And it did. That's how we know that in the early weeks, a fetus could change from male to female and female to male in the very, very early days. So now Dinah is born as a girl. That's why it says she's the daughter of Leah. No one knew what Leah did. Leah quietly prayed to God and said, God, I know I'm having a boy. She was a prophetess. I need this to be a girl. And so Dinah, who was supposed to be a boy, her soul became a feminine girl, a feminine soul. And that's why her name is Dinah, because Leah says, I have judged myself. I put judgment on myself that my sister should not be embarrassed. But this is not revealed only to us. That's why she's called the daughter of Leah. It would have been a boy if not for Leah. So whichever way you look on it, she's Leah's daughter. Now, one more unbelievable end to the story. When Dinah is abducted and then freed, she becomes pregnant and gives birth to a little girl who they called Asnat. Now, what happens to Asnat? She's ostracized. Everyone says, you're the child of a rape, even though she was amongst her people. So Yaakov says to his daughter Dinah, you know what? Let's send her to Egypt, to our family who lives in Egypt. And there she'll live a better life. No one will know who she is. No one will mock her, and she'll be happier there. And they give her a bracelet And inside the bracelet, Yaakov engraves the words, she is of the children of Jacob. He gives her this bracelet. She lives in Egypt. And when Joseph, the son of Rachel, remember, he's sold into slavery and he becomes the viceroy of Egypt, there's a ticker day parade. He's going on a chariot down the streets of Egypt. And all the girls are gazing at him because Yosef was one of the most handsome people in the universe. And they're all throwing things. This is where the Cinderella story comes from. They all want to marry him. And Asnat takes off her bracelet and she tosses it into the chariot of Joseph, which is, Dinah's the son of Leah. It's her cousin, right? Yeah, her cousin, her first cousin. And he gets back to his palace and he sees a bracelet and he flips it over and it has Hebrew words on it. I am from the family of Jacob. So he sends out his ministers, go find me the girl with the glass slipper. Go find me the girl to whom the bracelet belongs. Because he's not going to marry an Egyptian. He's still the son of Jacob. He's only going to marry someone from the family that worships as he worships one God and follows the Torah way. And they find Asnat, and he asks her, are you the owner of this bracelet? And she says, yes. And he says, we're going to get married. And they get married. And they have two beautiful sons. So this is showing you that she suffered terribly. He suffered terribly. Look, his brothers sell him into slavery. His brothers get rid of him. And he's the viceroy of Egypt, and she marries him. Asnat marries him. So there's a destiny here. There's a godly hand here. It's a painful route, but it ends up being a beautiful conclusion. And what's interesting is the same reason the brothers sell Joseph is the same reason Yaakov puts Dinah in a box. They don't get them. They don't understand these personalities. They're used to the regular personalities. They're used to the kid comes home from school, gets straight A's, does whatever mommy and daddy say the traditional way, never a peep. They don't understand someone like Yosef and Dinah, who are people that have an energy that can transform the universe. So they're going out, they're talking to people, and they're being told, no, that's not our way. We stay in the tent. They don't understand that certain people are given the power to lead, transform, impact, and bring light to the universe. And this happens with us all the time. You meet someone who's wearing mixed-colored socks. They haven't brushed their hair, and let's say they don't look the typical look, or they don't talk the typical talk. And you wonder, what a wacky or crazy or too free-spirited, but those people have an energy that they have to utilize. God gave them that energy. Imagine if Amadeus Mozart wasn't given a piano. What would he be? A butcher? A tailor, a matchmaker. People who have enormous talent and transformative talent that can transform have this in them, and they have to be allowed to fly and do what they are meant to do. When Joseph goes out and he tells his brother, I had a dream about the stars, and then he has a dream about the wheat, and they were like, wow, what a dreamer. Go write yourself a little novel. Go put it into a bestseller. They didn't understand him. So they sold him, all because they couldn't get him. And that's what happens. Dinah's put in a box by her father. I can't have Esau glance upon you. But she would have changed the destiny of the Jewish people in a sense. So the Kabbalah gives us this deep insight to what's really happening here. And it's so important for us to realize this, that we inherit, first of all, the spiritual destiny of our family, of our parents, in a good way. Let's not look at it as a burden. And that we are given qualities to utilize. Some of us are meant to sit quietly and be the scholars, the studiers, and some people are meant to go out into the world, transform, bring light, and share their gifts. And everyone has their way to serve God and serve their godly soul. And we should never put anyone in a box and say, well, this is how you have to be. Bobby was like this, Zaidi was like this, Tante Yenta was like this, and you're going to be like this. No, you have to appreciate the gifts of your children or people you know. Is look at people objectively and say, why are they have a certain light, a certain talent. It's very hard because we love, everyone likes to have the herd mentality. The same is good. We all think alike, do alike. Otherwise, we don't want to be with those types. So we have to appreciate the gifts God gave people. And you see the ramifications in the lives of the matriarchs and patriarchs. Anybody want to add anything or say anything? There's a lot to be said about how if the brothers did the right thing, you know? They told Shechem, circumcise, and then they killed them. Wow, heavy stuff.
I wonder if Dina had been allowed to marry Esau. Did I have it right? If we wouldn't have the Arab-Israeli conflict we have today. I don't know.
You never know. You never know. Although it's okay, I didn't want to share this because I myself don't understand it. There's a lot of things when I sit and study I don't get for a while. It takes time to understand it. So some concepts I'm sharing with you took me a few months to digest before I could present it. There's one thing I haven't digested it totally yet, but I'll share a tidbit before I want to end up with something very, very poignant. Is it says Esau hates Jacob, Rashi says, at the encounter, that even though they kissed, there's a fundamental principle that Esau hates Jacob. So you say to yourself, really, there's no hope here. But Esau hates Jacob. You know why Esau hates Jacob? Doesn't hate in the traditional sense, I hate you because you're prettier than me, or I hate you because you stole my inheritance. We hate that which shines a light on how we're supposed to be. So Esau hates Jacob because Jacob shines a light of how it's meant to be. You're not meant to be like an Esau. You're meant to believe in one God. You're meant to have a cohesive relationship between body and soul. You're not meant to abduct people, hurt people, kill. You're meant to lead a life of godly ethics and morals. So Esau hates that which he doesn't have in him. So that's one understanding of Esau, the principle of an Esau. And remember, Esau had free choice. Esau chose this path. There was every reason for him not to be the way he was. He grew up in Abraham's tent, just like his brother. And why is he called Esau, by the way? Esau means whole, complete. He was born complete. He had teeth in his mouth. He had a head full of hair. The Torah describes him as a soul born complete.
Wow.
He, in truth, the Hasidus, which is, again, Kabbalah, says Esau's potential was much greater than Jacob, but he didn't tap into it. Esau was born first because he had greater power than Jacob. Jacob was amazing, but Esau was meant to be the next patriarch. And Jacob was supposed to be like the scholar and the Rebbe, and he would be the conqueror and the king because he was powerful. He was called Admoni, the red-headed one, because he was red-headed and also powerful. By the way, when King David is born, and they think he's illegitimate, which he wasn't. Remember, we find out later that King David was not an illegitimate son. But the mother kept quiet because her husband realizes when Samuel, the prophet, comes to anoint King David, he's redheaded. And everyone thinks, how could it be David? He's not a legitimate son. He's a redhead. And he's Admoni. He's like Esau. They called him the redhead. They drew a parallel between him and Esau. But when he's anointed as king, they said Admoni, he's the redhead. But he's the redhead that utilized his potential to be a king of Israel, a righteous king of Israel. So you can have Admoni and Admoni, but they're not necessarily the same. The world was deceived. They said, how could King David be the king? Has an illegitimate mother, which was a lie, because her husband didn't realize it was her that conceived with him, which is another story we'll tell another time. And he was redheaded. How could a redhead be king of Israel? He's a nobody. But ends up Samuel the prophet points and says, no, he's the anointed one. He's King Arthur. He pulled out the sword from the rock. That's where the King Arthur story comes from. From this story, many of, by the way, the fairy tales and fables come from Bible stories. Cinderella, Rip Van Winkle, King Arthur with the stone and the rock, the sword and the stone. I love fairy tales. But they come from the Bible. But yeah, so this is it. Esau had the potential for greatness. He just didn't tap into it. Here's the lost potential.
And
So yeah, you could have happened, Diane, by the way. It could happen. People have free choice. And unfortunately, we don't always use it for the good free choice. We make the wrong choice. Not you, but we people, and I'm saying, yeah. So the Torah ends, and we'll end with this, is very sad. Rachel goes into labor, and during labor, the midwives basically say she's not going to survive, and the baby son, the last of the 12 tribes, is born. And it's very strange that in the Torah, there's no conversation on her deathbed. There's no like, oh, honey, please stay with me, or darling, we had such a good life together. There's one only conversation happening here, what to name the baby. And it's a very strange conversation I want to share with you. You want to talk about love and you want to talk about the perfect marriage. Listen to this very conversation that's very, how do you call it when it's, cryptic. What's another word for cryptic? So what happens at the very moment before she passes away? She says to Jacob, who's there, what should we call our son? She says, I want to call him Ben Oni, the son of my deception. So he says, no, let's call him Binyamin, the son of oath. What is this conversation? Weird conversation. Remember what happens. Why does she die young? When she leaves her father Lavan, she takes away his idols. He had a family of idols he worshipped. So she didn't want her father to be an idol worshiper. So she takes his idols and hides it in her saddle of her camel, where she knows no one's going to look. So Lavan, when he chases down his daughter and his son-in-law, why'd you leave without my permission? I told you can't leave yet. And besides, you stole my idols, he says to Jacob. Now, Jacob didn't know his wife stole the idols. So he said to Lavan, I make you an oath that whoever stole your idols will die very soon.
Yes.
So now it's on her deathbed. She said to herself, my husband is going to go the rest of his life feeling guilty and miserable because he cursed me indirectly. I cannot allow for me to leave this world with my husband having any pain. So she says to him, let's call him the son of my deception, Ben-Oni, because it's my fault. I had not taken the idols from my father. You wouldn't have been forced to do anything. But because of me, this all happened. She doesn't want him to have blame, so she takes the blame on herself. And he says, no, honey, I cannot allow you to die with this grief and this pain. It's my fault. Had I not made an oath, had I not made a Binyamin, you would still be alive. So look at this beautiful thing happening. It's on the deathbed. She's about to die. Each one doesn't want the other one to leave each other feeling blame and guilt and pain. So they each have a debate about the name. At the end, he's named Binyamin, by the way, which means it really has both in it. But he's named at the end Binyamin. Why? There's one more point to the conversation. She says, what's going to happen to my baby son without a mother? Ben Oni, he's going to be a son that's always going to be a son of grief. Children without parents, without proper parental control, they sometimes drift away. Who's going to watch my little Binyamin? Who's going to make sure he walks on the right path? So Yaakov says, Benjamin, we're going to call him Benjamin. He's going to be a righteous son. Don't worry, he's not going to be Ben-Oni, a son of grief, a son that suffers the pain of being an orphan. He's going to be Binyamin. He's going to be a son of that always is righteous, is going to feel love, is going to go on the righteous path because I'm never going to let him walk alone. So second part of the conversation is not about what happened. It's more about who's going to take care of my little Yingala, who's going to raise him, who's going to tuck him in at night. And he says, don't worry, my darling Benjamin. He's going to be my righteous one. So this is the conversation. They don't have to have a million words, the Torah. The Torah just discusses the name because in the name shows their love, their connection. They don't need a million words to say goodbye. The discussion about their new little boy being born shows in it what their relationship was. You know, you walk into some homes and nobody's really, the husband and wife are not on each other's lap, but you feel love. You know that house has a cohesiveness. You know the husband and wife have a good relationship. You feel it. And then you walk into some homes and there's so much PDA, but you don't feel the love somehow. It's all a farce. It's all made up. So this is the love. Doesn't need to have like 17 conversations. They're talking about what will happen to their son. So this is what ending up happening, that also Jacob was telling his wife one more thing. You want to call our son Ben-Oni, a son of grief, of pain. I'm going to call him Benjamin, which is really the fundamental foundation of Jewish life, that from pain and grief, we always have to bring forth growth. Empowerment. Pain should be a springboard for revelation and strength and life and empowerment. He says, Ben-Oni, I'm going to call him Benjamin, because this is really our foundation of life. We take pain and we turn it into empowerment. We take pain and it's a springboard for strength. I was looking for adjectives. I wrote down some adjectives. I couldn't think of my adjectives, but that's really what he's telling her. And that's why at the end he's named Benjamin. They agree on the name, but she realizes, that's right, that's the name for my son. And she passes away and she's buried, not in the cave of Machpelah, with Leah and Abraham and Sarah and the other matriarchs and patriarchs. She's buried in Beit Lechem, in the cave of Rachel. The caver means the tent of Rachel. And Margaret, I did touch upon it last week, why she's buried there. But I want to share with you, do we have another minute to share why she's buried there? Do we? Okay. So I want to share this. So first of all, she's buried there because God gave a directive that Rachel should be put in a place that when the Jewish people will have to be exiled from the land of Israel, to leave, they have to pass Beit Lechem and the resting place of Rachel, and there they will have a place to pray and find comfort. And that's why Kever Rachel is the quintessential place where people pray. First of all, they pray for children because she had fertility problems. So they say when you pray at the gravesite of Rachel, she can give you a blessing because she prayed and she had a child. So many people go there to pray for children, but more importantly, because she is the quintessential mother of the Jewish people, that when we are in pain and we have sorrow and we are in exile and the Jews were marching in chains, enslaved by the Romans when they destroyed the first temple, and they were walking out, they were taken out of Israel, they passed the tomb of Rachel, and there they found comfort and peace to pray at her graveside. And when Moses and Abraham saw what was going to happen to the Jewish people with the destruction of the first temple and the second temple. They cried out to God, how could you do this? How could you do this to your people? God said, you don't understand. Then Rachel called out to God, God, you are allowing this to happen to the Jewish people? You're afraid of rivalry, of idolatry? No idol can rival God. I did not feel rivalry with my sister Leah. When I saw that she had to marry Jacob, I gave her my special signs. And I gave up on my covet, on my honor, so that she should marry Jacob. She should not be embarrassed. You're embarrassed by the idols? You're going to destroy the Jewish people because of idols? Look what I gave up for my sister Leah. Surely you could give up for the Jewish people. So when God heard Rachel calling out, what Moses couldn't accomplish, what Abraham couldn't accomplish, Rachel was able to accomplish, and God said, okay, restrain your voice from weeping, hold back your eyes from tears, for your work has its reward, and your children shall return to their border, God tells Rachel. This is what he responded. So it is Rachel's voice. It says, Rachel, Rachel mevaka al baneha, the quintessential poetic word. Rachel is crying for her children. And this is the one cry God responds to more than anybody. He says, okay, you're right. I will return the Jewish people to their borders, back to the land of Israel. So Rachel seems like maybe she's the beautiful one. She's the one that doesn't seem to have the most conflict, but really, look what happens. She's not buried with her husband. She's buried alone, but that's her self-sacrifice. A mother sacrifices for her children. The quintessential Yiddish mom is Rachel. That's the quintessential Yiddish mother. She's buried alone in Vayislach. Why? Because her children need her there. You know, some mothers are mothers only in good times. But when you need your mother, where is she? She's on vacation. She has no time. Rachel's there in the moments we need her most. That's what a Yiddish mama is. That's what a Yiddish mama is. So we end off with this. Some sad stories, but at the end of the day, it really, really is meant to impact us and look at our lives in a different way. You know? So let's wish each other a wonderful week, a healthy week, a happy week, and